for joining us. For joining the Fairfax County Public Library this afternoon for a visit to Nicodemus Town with illustrator Nicole Tadgell. This book was a Kansas State Notable Mention. My name is Alicia Ricconi. I am the Youth Services Manager at our Patrick Henry branch, and I will be facilitating today's event. Today's event will be recorded to be posted on the library's YouTube channel. This program has a lot of audience participation, so you can participate through the chat, or if you want to unmute and put on your video, you can participate that way as well. If you have any questions during the program, let us know. You can submit them in the chat or unmute yourself and put your camera on. All right, and so now please welcome award-winning illustrator Nicole Tadgell.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. Nice to see you all. Yes, I am the illustrator of Follow Me Down to Nicodemus Town. And this book was written by Alexandria LaFay. And I'm sure you know that an author writes books and an illustrator draws the pictures. And what happens with drawing a book is the illustrator will get the manuscript, usually from the publisher or from our agent, and the publisher thinks that that illustrator might do a really good job. And I have illustrated several historical nonfiction picture books, so they thought I would do well with this one as well. So what I did first was read the manuscript, and I read it, and I read it, and I read it, and I read it. I read it so many times that I pretty much had it memorized. And then I started to see pictures in my head. And I'm sure a lot of you, when you read a story, you see pictures in your head too. Well, one thing about a historical picture book is that it needs to look like it did in that time period. And this story is about a settlement of African Americans who went west. So they were in Kansas, in this town that they called Nicodemus Town. And since we can't go back in time, unfortunately, I needed to do lots of research to make sure that this story really had the feeling of really being at that time period in the 1800s. So what do I do for research is I go to the library, which is one of the best places to be, and librarians are super helpful and are the best people to help with research. And I look at photographs, lots of photographs. Later on, I'll be showing you some of those photographs. And then I also went to Nicodemus and saw how the place looks in present day. And there were still some of the buildings that were there in from the 1800s. They don't look exactly the same, but it was a wonderful experience to be there, which I will share with you. So now that you've just seen a little bit of background and here's the book, I'm going to share my screen so that I can read the story to you, so you can get some context into our story. So here we go. I'm going to click share screen. And here we go. Here's the story. So this is Follow Me Down to Nicodemus Town. And that's the cover. This is called the title page, based on the true story of the African American Pioneer Settlement by Albert Whitman and Company. I want to zoom in just a little bit more so that we can see it better. The hoo-wee, follow me holler of the 6 o'clock train woke Day-Day from a dream of riding toward a prairie so wide even the angels couldn't see the end of it. Her family, the Pattons, had a plan. They would own a place in that open land. And we see Day Day sleeping and dreaming. And we can see trains off into the distance. I painted some angels in there because she's dreaming, and some little bunnies. To leave sharecropping behind, her mama sewed dresses so fine they practically got up and danced. Her papa worked the fields by day and built furniture by moonlight with Day Day at his side. Day Day made a shoeshine box and headed to the train station. See her dad here, dancing dresses, helping her dad, and going off with her shoeshine box. She watched shiny shoe after shiny shoe step into those trains, knowing the pennies in her pocket would pile up for years before they could pay off their debt. The whole Patton family worked from sun climb to sun slide, but still owed more than they made to the landowner, Mr. Sills. He kept them tied to his fields in a house they didn't own. But good things come to those who pray. That fall, Day Day spied a notice offering land for colored folks in Kansas, even told of a soon-to-be town built just for them, Nicodemus. She ran that notice right to her papa, who said, "Why, Day Day, you done delivered a star we can hang our dreams on." They worked twice as long and 3 times as hard until their penny bank began to fill with seed and deed money. One afternoon, a man with his shoe half shined heard the last call to board. He ran off so quick he dropped his wallet. Snatching it, Day Day raced after him like a hen-stealing fox chased by a hound, shouting the whole way. The man reached out the window to claim it. Turned out, Dee Dee chased down a miracle. A letter came a few weeks later with a slip of heaven inside. The man who dropped the wallet had sent her a finder's fee of $10. The whole family whooped and hollered enough to knock the nails out of the walls. So $10 is a lot of money when you're saving pennies. With Papa's furniture money, the cotton he brought in, and Mama's dress money, they had enough to pay their debt, stake a claim, and plant the seeds Dee Dee's shoe money would buy. They paid Sills and bought tickets with the finder's fee. Those little slips of paper felt like wings. The Pattons boarded the train hand in hand and chugged off with their eyes set on Kansas. In Nicodemus, they stepped out on a wheat-worthy prairie, joining a church full of settlers, and dug a home in the bank of the Solomon River. Day Day was the first to use the door she helped her papa hang. There they are in their dugout. With their claim staked, they had 2 years to prove it. They had to fence it, farm it, and pay for the deed. With the seed money untouchable and a full winter between them and the fields they needed to plow, the Pattons didn't have much more than the stars to guide them, stories to tell, and plans to make. With a sling, Day Day shot supper until the prairie dogs grew scarce. When their bellies set to biting, Day Day went out with her papa to hunt further afield, but she got lost in the head-high prairie grass, coming face to face with an Indian man taller than their house. He held a rabbit in each hand, saying, "Saw your smoke go thin. Figured your food might not be any more plentiful than your fuel." That's how the Pattons met Shankasabe of the Children of the Middle Water. The white folks called them the Osage, but they say they're the Niu Kanska. The Pattons called themselves blessed for all that their new neighbors brought: food, fellowship, and the most precious gift of all, hope for the spring to come. Mama set to sewing. Day basted, knowing folks had worked their shoes down to nails getting to Kansas. Day sowed seeds with Papa, planted a garden with Mama, and waited for things to grow. When the small prairie flowers started to bloom, plenty more folks poured into Nicodemus. The town went up like a revival tent with a new hotel, a bank, a store, and orders for church-going dresses. On occasion, Day made a mail run into town to pass the time. One afternoon, she heard Mr. Zachary say he had a full house in the hotel. Taking a deep breath, Day asked, "You think any of them folks need their shoes shined?" Quicker than a wink, he plopped his own shoe on the chair. "I sure could use a shine." And that's how Day got a job shining shoes at the St. Francis Hotel. In 2 years' time, the Pattons had fences up and fields harvested, thanks to the helping hands of the folks of Nicodemus and the children of the Middle Waters. They could prove their claim. Papa let Day carry that money all the way to the homestead office. She even brought the deed back to her mama, who hung it in a frame Day made from the prairie grass around their home, which was now theirs, true and clear. That Sunday, they had a party on the banks of the Solomon. Reverend Hickman prayed over their home. The folks of Nicodemus gathered at tables brought from every dugout. Shankasabe and his family arrived with all the food they could carry. Mama brought out enough pies to feed all of Kansas. And the Pattons finally had a roof over their heads and land to call their own. But most important, they had a home where they could tell stories, use the stars to guide them, and make plans for the things to come. The end. And this is a segment about the Exodusters, talking about after the Civil War had ended, and about sharecropping and facts in here that everyone can read about, should they choose to. But I figured we could take a break here, and I can unshare my screen and we can talk about if anybody has any questions before we move on to the next segment.
It looks like Ethan has a question, so ask him to, want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, I'm Ethan, he's Philip.
Okay.
Okay, so how many ways do you color your art? Do you like paint? You use like crayons and markers? How many ways do you use it?
That's a great question. I start out with pencil, and then I use watercolor. So I use watercolor to paint the color, and I use pencil to get in all the lines. Thank you for the question.
Right. Anybody else have any other questions?
Okay. I don't see any.
All right, so I guess we'll keep on moving.
Okay. Well, we will move on to the next segment, which will talk more about the art. So I'm going to share my screen again and show you here behind the scenes. So first thing I do, I mentioned a little bit about in the beginning, which is do research. So I start with the rough pencils, and then I do a book layout, and then I do final pencils, and then I do final color. So it all follows a progression. Breaking the text. That when I mentioned earlier, we were talking about how I read the words over and over again? Well, these are all the words. I took all the words and put them really tiny on one piece of paper. And you see in here how I have cover 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are all page numbers. So I would know what the different scenes were throughout the entire book. And then characters. I need to think about all the different characters that are in the book. We know there's Day Day and her ma and her pa and Shanka Sabe. If you notice in the book, there's a lot of other characters in there, like the Reverend, and there's all the different people in Nicodemus that come to them at the end. Those are all background characters. And there's no mention of a dog or of Ma and Pa having another baby. But I thought about it and I thought, well, if they're there for 2 or 3 years, it could happen. She could get another little sister or brother in there. So I drew that happening. I also looked at pictures, photographs of the time, and to see what people looked like, to see what they dressed like, and for the father, I saw some pictures of a very nicely dressed man who would also look like he could be a farmer because his hat, the way his hat was, and he could wear overalls while he was working in the farm and in the garden, and maybe he could dress up a little bit when he's going into town. So I really used my imagination as well as looking at photos. And I wanted Day Day to be, to kind of look like her mom and be young, but not too young. And I found some more reference pictures, like I knew that the text talked about the hotel and about people coming there in stagecoaches. So I needed to know, okay, what does a stagecoach look like? So I would look at pictures to make sure that I was getting the location and the details correct. So that way I would start with some online research in addition to the library research. And prairie flowers. I used to love Laura Ingalls Wilder books when I was little, and I always wanted to visit a prairie because Laura would talk about all the flowers and the grasses and what it was like to be there. So I really, really wanted to go. This one is a really cool photo. This picture is a picture of 2 kids who actually lived in Nicodemus at that time. They are Earl and Lavina Alexander. And this is a picture, I don't think this is actually Shanka Sabe, but it's a person who lived in that area at the time, who was one of the children of the Middle Waters. So I thought maybe he would look a bit like that. So I kind of used this photo as inspiration as to what my Shanka Sabe would look like. Here's an actual poster from that time. So I used this as a reference material to make the poster that I drew look like this poster, because this is actually from that time period. And here's some pictures of trains that looked, that's what the trains would have looked like at that time. And this is actually a ticket, what the ticket would have looked like at that time. Dugouts. Now, I did read a lot about dugouts, and a dugout is basically a house that's kind of in the ground, where they would dig into the side of the hill, and then it would also take sod and put it on top. And this was a great building material at the time because there aren't a lot of trees out in the prairie. So the sod was actually more of an insulator as well as being a good structure for people to live in. Prairie country. Photographs don't really do it justice as how big and how beautiful it really is out there. It's absolutely astonishing. Oh yes, Library of Congress has a a website that has original photos from that time period. I use that as a good resource, as well as the Nicodemus historical site. That they have a website. Please do visit it. And they have lots of photographs of both old Nicodemus and present day Nicodemus. So here you might see, this is very similar to what I drew on the cover. This is what the Nicodemus town actually looked like at that time. They had a stone church and they had a general store. This is what the town looked like. It basically had just a couple of streets and houses along the sides of the streets. This photo is another church. This one was taken in the 1940s, as you can see from the car. They didn't have cars like that in the 1800s. And here's a picture of people who, very typical of what people would wear at that time. Now, primary source research. That is when you get firsthand experience. This is a photo that I took when I went out to Nicodemus. Very beautiful sunrise. A lot of driving too. It's very, very, very far away. I flew to Kansas and then, oh, someone's raising their hand. What's your question? Right here.
How long did you stay in Nicodemus?
Oh, I stayed in Nicodemus, I think it was one day that I was there. It was a beautiful day. Thank you. Okay, so this is a photo I mentioned earlier that was taken in the 1940s. And this is what it looked like when I was there in Nicodemus that day. There's a hole in the roof and there isn't that little, I don't know what that is, at the top. And the shape of the windows was different too. It's really interesting to see how things changed and very cool that the building still stood. This is a town hall and it has the year it was built here. This was built in 1939. But this is the historic center and this is where they have a lot of the photos and historical pieces that I was able to look at. Another example of a poster from those days and sharecroppers from those days. That's what people look like when they were, what they would wear. And here's a really interesting segment that I thought I would share with you. There's a woman named Willina Hickman, and she said, "When we got in sight of Nicodemus, the men shouted, 'There's Nicodemus!' Being very sick, I hailed this news with gladness. I looked with all the eyes I had. 'Where is Nicodemus? I don't see it.' My husband pointed out various smokes coming out of the ground and said, 'That is Nicodemus.' The families lived in dugouts. The scenery was not at all inviting, and I began to cry." So yes, it was and is very stark out there. Oh, someone else is raising her hand. What's your...
Where is Nicodemus?
Nicodemus is in Kansas, and Kansas is in the middle of the country. It's in between Colorado and I'm drawing a blank now, Indiana. But I flew out there and then rented a car and drove to the actual historical site. Does that answer your question? Okay. Definitely look it up on a map. I can share that. This is a video I took just so you can get an idea of what it felt like to be there. Cloudy day. Solomon River. Remember in the text it says that they made their home on the banks of the Solomon River? Well, these are some photos that I took at the Solomon River. It didn't look very much from where I could see from the road, but these are the kinds of trees and the kinds of plants that would have been there at the time that Day Day and her family were there. So after I did my trip and got all my research and all my photos, I went back home and I did some pencil drawings. Now this is an example of two different kinds of pencil drawings. The drawing on the right is regular pencil, like a number 2 pencil. And this, you can see I did the horizon with all this was going to be sky. And this is their dugout, and here's Day Day, and here's her parents. And this one, you see how it looks different, how the lines are kind of darker and smoother. This I did on my iPad because I was trying to see how it felt to draw on a tablet. Some of you might have drawn on like an iPad or something before, and it feels really different. So then I go from the rough pencils and I do final pencils, which means they are a lot tighter. There's a lot more detail, and that's what they look like. This one happens to be the spot of them looking at their homestead deed inside of their dugout. Here's some more examples of some tight finished pencils. Here's their dugout entirely. You see how he left all this blank in here? I didn't draw lines because that was going to be all filled in with paint later on when I painted it. And here's the final pencil of Shankasabe and Day Day. And some wildlife. I did some birds in the background, some leaves. So then you needed to do the colors. Now when you're painting a whole book, you need to make sure that everything is going to look like it goes together. So for example, it wouldn't make sense for me to go crazy and just make whatever I wanted, whatever color. I needed to do it with intention. So what I did was I printed out all of my final drawings onto paper. So they're all like this, and it kind of looks like comic strips. And then I go over it with my watercolor really, really loose, really, really sketchy and almost sloppy. And that's where I'm thinking about what am I going to make, what color, what scenes are going to be emphasized, and what colors am I going to use to draw attention to something, and what colors am I going to use to make something recede into the background. So that is what I did, and I keyed off 2 colors, yellow and purple. And I love yellow and purple. But as you can see, Day Day is always wearing something purple in every scene. So we have another question.
So like when you like use watercolors to fill it in, but it's like really watery and you dried it, but how did you not like across the pencil? It's like you put it like in it, but not across it.
I will show you that. Thank you, though. That's an excellent question. I will get to that right now. Okay, so here's where I'm thinking about the colors when I'm making decisions on the colors. Let's choose pictures of that. And then I go into actually painting the actual artwork. So what I do is I take the final pencil drawing, which is on paper, and I scan it into the computer, which is how I got to here. And once the drawing is in the computer, I can put a piece of watercolor paper in my printer and print out the pencil drawing. And this works great for a couple of reasons. One is the pencil doesn't smear, because now that it's a printed on watercolor paper, it's ink. So I can go on top of it with the watercolor and it doesn't smear or bleed or anything like that. So you can kind of see where I did a wash all the way across, and you can still see the pencil lines of the town, because I painted right on top of it. But you see Mom and Day Day over here, you see how the watercolor did not go on them? That's because I painted masking fluid on them because I wanted to preserve the color of the paper while painting the background. So, and masking fluid is kind of like glue, where it's wet and you paint it on something that you want to stay white. And you let it dry, and then you paint on your background, and the masking fluid pushes away the color and doesn't let the color stick on. And then you peel it off, and I'll skip here and I'll show you. So this section shows where I painted on masking fluid on Day Day and Shankasabe, and now here I'm pulling it off after it's dried, and it pulls off kind of like glue. Pretty neat. So this is the beginning stage of this painting, and this is the finished one. Very, very lots of bright lights in here, bright colors. And here's a masking fluid scene. This one is one of my favorite scenes because it takes place in winter, and I think winter is so beautiful. Lots of subtle colors in here with purples and golds. And the spot scene of Papa and Shankasabe and Day Day and her mom. The cover. Now the cover went through a few different, slightly different variations of what I was going to do for the color, because I had trouble making up my mind as to how I wanted it to look. At first I thought maybe there's a rainbow coming through and there's storm clouds around. Another thought was, well, maybe there's like lots of colors in the sky. Another thought was, well, maybe there's no color, it's just plain blue. And this is what I ended up going with, this one, with this one. Actually, I painted these words, but the publisher didn't end up using them. They used just plain purple type, probably because this was a little too distracting, too rainbowy. And the actual painting is actually behind me. You can see, I don't know if you can see it. There. And then I have some links at the end, which we can post and share later on. That's the end. So I will click stop share. Now, does anybody have any questions after seeing this section? I don't see anybody asking. That's okay though. Oh, I don't hear it.
So I have a question. So it's about the Nicodemus town thing. So how did you draw the real landscape?
How did I draw the real landscape?
Yeah.
Well, I looked at pictures of the landscape that was there, and I thought about what I wanted to show in the scene, and I did a rough sketch to see if it would work, especially because I need to leave room for the text. So I'll use this as an example. In here, the text says, the Pattons boarded the train and rode off with their eyes set on the land they'd call their own. So I knew that I would be drawing the train and the family getting on the train. And so I chose to show it this way. So it's a combination of what the text is telling me and what is in my imagination and how it comes out in the final piece.
Oh.
So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
I actually have a question. So when you went to visit Nicodemus town, I'm assuming you took pictures. Was there any there that you were like, oh, I just really have to include this?
Yes, yes. There were these flowers, which I will go back to showing. These flowers. Okay, these flowers
Yeah.
were around the Solomon River, and I'd never seen anything like them before. They were really pretty, and I don't remember what they're called, but I had to put them in the book, as well as butterflies. They're tiny butterflies. There were rabbits, just all the little things that I saw, little birds. Everything was like sort of a subtle beauty out there.
Beautiful. Let's get another question.
Yes. So like when you made the picture, like what details did we miss?
What details did we miss? Well, you saw the dogs, the puppies that Shankasabe had. Did you see those? And you saw that the mom, her mom was pregnant in one picture. You saw the baby in the end picture. Did you see that? You didn't see that? Okay. Well, there was a scene. I'll show you the scene. On this page, they're talking about how they planted a garden and waited for things to grow. And I was thinking, what else grows? Babies grow. So in this scene, you can see that Mama is pregnant in the background. And at the end scene, we have over here when they're hanging the deed. You can see there's a little baby right there. Yeah. And also when the Reverend is blessing their house, you can also see the baby. Little baby brother or sister. Well, speaking of flowers and things that are in the book, I thought it would be fun to do a drawing. So who wants to draw too? Everybody wants to draw, yay. Okay. Well, you can grab a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, whichever you wish. And we're going to draw a couple of flowers. Now, normally what I do is I look at reference materials, and I am going to move this screen so that I can see my reference material, and you can just look at my drawing, or you can find your own at some point, but I will show you. Here we go. Okay. So for anything that you're going to draw, the first thing you do is you look at the shape of it. Flowers, you know, have petals, and they usually go around a center point. So first thing we're going to do is make a center point. So I'm going to do it kind of in the middle here. And these flowers actually have what looks like more than one center point. I'm going to do 3 of them, like that. And then they have petals coming off of that. So I'm going to do like a little U shape, another U shape, another U shape, another U shape, U shape. What's a C? Could be a C, U shape. Another one, another one, another one. And they don't have to close if you don't want them to close. And this flower has petals that look like this. It's kind of like a, and then do another one. then do another one, and do another one, do another one. And they have, for coloring, it looks like a dark shape in here. I would color that like a darker color. And then there's another one in here, another one in here, another one in here, another one in here. So that's the flower. And then there's a stem that comes down, and there's leaves. And the leaves look a lot like the flowers. Come out like this. And then the rest of the stem comes down like that. So that's one of the prairie flowers. There's another prairie flower. It might be a little harder to draw. And it kind of looks like a spike. It has a long stem like this. And then it has slim leaves that come out like this. And then it has a section that has so many tiny flowers that I'm just gonna make this look like a puff. And then it has this other section that comes up like this. And it has these little tiny things that I'm just gonna go like that. And there's hundreds of them all around. So that's another prairie flower. I think that one was called purple clover. And then you can color it however you wish. Animals are a lot harder to do. I don't think we will do that unless we have time to. Does anybody want to share their drawings too? Ooh, let me see. Oh, that's hard to see. Ah, oh, now I see it. Oh, look at that. You drew a train. Wow. Look at that. Look at all those wheels. Look at all those windows. That is amazing. Excellent job. Ooh, you did trains too. Wow, look at that. Wow. I am so impressed. Oh, and you did the flower, the spiky flower. That is excellent. Oh, and you did another one. Very good, very good. Okay, who's next? Let's see. Oh, look at you. Can you hold it up again? Oh, thank you. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Oh, and you did this one too. Wow, you guys are amazing. Very nice, very nice. I like it. That is beautiful.
Right.
What a great audience you are. Wonderful, wonderful.
All right. Is there anybody else that wanted to share? Had such beautiful drawings.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, excellent. Well, some people actually ask me how long it takes to make a book. So I can kind of tell you, it takes a long time to make a book. It took me a year to make this one. So 12 months. And that's doing all of those, the pencil sketches, those rough pencil sketches, and the final pencil sketches, and then the final artwork, and getting all everything back and forth together between the editor and the publisher, and then it gets printed, and then it arrives. And I was honored Oh, that reminds me. I was honored with the Kansas State Notable Award, which is a very nice honor. And they award it to books that accurately portray life in Kansas. So I really feel like it was worth the trip out to Kansas to make sure that I really had a sense of place and was really able to capture how it felt to be out there. And I also met some descendants of the original inhabitants of Nicodemus. So there was one woman who really spearheaded the Nicodemus Historical Society. Her name was Angela Bates. And I met with her and she talked about the town and she showed me the different facilities and everything. And it was really interesting and fun to see. Oh, someone has another question.
So where are you currently at?
Well, currently I am in Virginia.
And then where are you from? Where are you
from? Well, I was born in Detroit and I lived in New York for a long time. And then I lived in Massachusetts for an even longer time. And now I live in Virginia. So it's hard to say when you live at so many places, where are you actually from? It's your question. Oh, I gotta click ask.
How many years old are you? How old are you?
Oh, how old am I?
Nice to ask. That's not nice to ask.
Age is just a number.
It's not nice to ask.
It's a curious question. I am 51 years old. 51. Do you have another question?
I think Lucy had a question too after.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know.
And in the chat, Annie says that she's been to New York.
Oh, cool.
I've been to New York too. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, yes. And not to mention that I make some books. Very good, Lucy. Bookmaking is fun. I've pretty much always made books ever since I was little. I just loved telling stories, and I would write and draw on anything and make stories and pictures. Never got tired of it. Oh, you make comic books. Comics are awesome. I love comics. It's such a fantastic medium. You can really get a lot of expression and a lot across in comics. Somebody's raising their hand again.
So how many other books have you wrote or illustrated?
I have illustrated, I think, 34 books. Yeah, it's a lot. 34 books.
Is it always the publisher that reaches out to you, or is it the author?
Very rarely it's the author. That's because the publisher is the one who makes the contract. Yeah, usually if the author wants to work with a specific illustrator, they'll ask the publisher to reach out. Yeah, that's typically how it works.
Are there authors that you've worked with a lot over and over doing illustrations?
Probably the one I've worked with the most is Suzanne Slade, and we've collaborated on several books. Usually it's the same process where I get the manuscript and I illustrate it. But sometimes there's a little bit of back and forth between what the illustrator can show, because sometimes what the author wrote can be shown in an illustration, and it doesn't have to be in words too. So like, for example, it may not be necessary to say that that Day put flowers in her hair if I show a picture of her putting flowers in her hair.
Mhm. Let's see here. In the chat, we've got this, Annie asked him, what books did you draw? Do you have some particular favorites that you'd like to mention? Other Follow Me to Nicodemus Town.
I've got a couple over here I can grab.
All right.
These are two recent ones. This one is Astronaut Annie. I'm not sure if anyone has seen this or heard of it, but this one's by Suzanne Slade, and it's about a little girl who she wants to be an astronaut, and in the story she's making a craft for school, and at the end it's called Career Day, and so she works on her costume for Career Day. And at the end, it turns out that it's an astronaut and she wants to be an astronaut. And this one was really fun to draw because all of her family gets involved. And the best thing about this book is this one was chosen to be one of 5 books to go up on the shuttle and be read on the International Space Station. So one of the astronauts read this book on the space station. We were really honored to see that. So my book got in space. Now the other book that I have here is called A Real Sisters Pretend, and this one's by Megan Dowd Lambert, and it's about 2 girls who are adopted, and they are real sisters. And it was based on the author's own adopted girls. They had a conversation where their mom overheard them talking about how they are real sisters. And this one actually is has a little bit of a comic book feel or graphic novel feel because it's a conversation. So there are speech bubbles showing which character is speaking, and there are frames breaking out the action in the conversation, because it would have taken more pages than they needed for that to happen. I love this book. This book is so charming. One of my favorites.
Looks like Lucy has a question.
Okay.
I just wanted to tell you that, so I make comic books and my art is in the middle of improving because when I was a little kid, I didn't have really good drawings, but I appreciated it. And I continued making more comic books, and I'm in the middle of a few comic books.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, you just you get better and better every day the more you practice, just like pretty much anything. And having multiple projects is a good thing too, because if you get stuck on one, you can always work on another one and come back to it. Annie says, that's my name. Does Annie have a question?
Yep, so I have a question. I just have something to tell you that I made like 2 comic books, but it was just like a short comic book. It was about a princess like touching a diamond and turning like like beautiful. And then the other one is about a dog that is actually a superhero and that has to stop a monster.
Oh, wow. Sounds like an interesting plot. Do you think about how you're going to have the action progress? Do you have like an ending in mind? Sorry.
It's okay. So, like, I actually finished it. So the ending was like he defeated the monster.
That's a good ending. Very nice. Glad you finished it too. Some people start things and never finish them. One of my comic books is about Shiba Inu trying to save a world with its friends. That's a dog. Yeah. I've seen those. They're cute dogs. I think they have a lot of fur too. That's got to be hard to draw. Lots of fur. So any other questions from anybody?
I didn't have a question, but another question, but I did look up what states Kansas is in between.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Colorado and Missouri.
Missouri. Okay. Thank you. Oh, and I forgot to mention that every year at Nicodemus site, they have what they call Homecoming Day. And I think it is the last week in June. And that's when descendants return to the area and have a big family party, which I don't think they got to do last year because of COVID. Maybe next year.
See in the chat, Annie asks, how do you make a comic book? So
Make, not draw.
is making that. I saw in the one book you had some kind of like a comic book.
Oh, comic books are very well, I don't want to say difficult, but they're different. They're very different because a picture book, you have basically one scene per page. In a comic book, you have lots of scenes per page. So it's a lot of time and energy and thought that goes into making a comic book. That's why as an art form, I think it is fantastic. Dogman is cool and fun. I've read a few of those. They're really great and fun. I don't know how he does it. I would imagine that he spends all his time drawing and thinking about it, especially at the, what do you call it, where he flips it. That's really fun too. Somebody has their hand up?
It's about a comic book I'm in the middle of making. So it is about a Shiba Inu, and I added a cat and 2 Siberian Huskies who are twins.
Ooh.
And I added a Pomeranian because the Pomeranian is their enemy, and she's trying to conquer the world by making all the villagers respect her.
Wow. That sounds like a really interesting plot. Pomeranians. They can be pretty bossy dogs. I've met a few of them. Siberian Husky twins, too. It sounds like you have a really excellent imagination, too. It's another one.
I finally finished my train drawing.
Whoa, look at that.
So I've got on top I've got a steam engine. On the bottom next is a diesel engine, and on the bottom is an electric train.
Wow, that's really good. I know who to contact the next time I need to draw a train. You're pretty good. Well, thank you. Another person? Question?
Oh. So I have a drawing that I want to show you. I made it on the blank pages in my science workbook.
Ooh, oh, look at that. Oh, that's beautiful. I like
Thanks.
that. I like that. I love drawing on anything. And you've got some good shapes going in there too. I like it. Nice work. One thing I wanted to mention is the importance of patience and perseverance in making a picture book, because when it takes a year to make a project, you have to develop a lot of patience. Because sometimes you can start a drawing and you don't like it, and sometimes you can't figure out how to make it look better if it doesn't look good. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll put it down and I'll work on another page, because there's a lot of pages to work on. So if I get stuck on one, I'll put it aside and I'll work on another one. And there's also what they call deadlines, which means I can't take forever to do the book. I have to complete it by a certain date, which means I have to plan all of the pages. So for example, say it's 3 months to do the paintings, and I know I have like 16 paintings, so I know I need to do a certain number of paintings per week to reach that end date. And that also has to take into account holidays, vacations. Maybe I might be sick, or maybe I might mess up. I might paint painting and then have a mistake that I don't like, and then I can't fix, and then I'll have to throw away the painting and start again, because that does happen sometimes. So I just don't give up. Never give up.
So looks like we are just a little over time. So any last questions for Nicole Tadgell? All right, well, I've had a lot of fun and I've learned a lot. I hope you guys have too. Just a reminder, this is going to be recorded to be posted onto the library's YouTube channel. And so thank you again, Nicole, and
Welcome.
it's a good day.
It's great talking to all of you. I'm so glad everybody participated and drew and helped everything be such a fantastic day. So thank you all. I'll put the links to you so that you can include those too. Bye.
Bye.